I'm going to talk this morning about Tarot Key 0, the Fool, and I'm wondering, do you prefer having, aside from being able to look up there, the Tarot Key, do you prefer having another one as large on an easel here in front of you? People are They're shaking their heads. Could you bring the easel? And you see, he picked up my thoughts. You see what happens when you become part of this Western Mystery Occult training system? Saves you from having to wear out your vocal cords. Communication takes place on inner and deeper areas where they knew, because usually I don't ask for the easel with the tarot key, but somehow today I thought, well, it will probably be very helpful. Draw it just a little this way, the whole easel. I meant the whole easel, that. Yeah, and no, a little back. Yeah, and slant it just slightly this way. Slightly that, just a trifle more there. There we are. Now you can look at it up there, and you can look at it here. All right. This morning I'm going to start a series on Sunday mornings dealing with the tarot as such. A special one. I take the first and third Sundays of each month, and except for the times when we have very special holidays that require a talk relating to the holidays, each of my Sundays I'm going to take these tarot keys consecutively. There being 22 of them, I guess it'll take us how long? I'm a mathematical moron. Husband? How long will that take us? At 2 a month. At 2 a month. You mathematicians, well, however long, that's fun, you see. Now, that was the first thing I thought we ought to do in relation to Tarot Key 0, the Fool, is to show that time does not mean the same thing at all times. Because this is a good way to begin an idea that relates to time, yet to show you that time is something other than we usually think it is. Because as we can see, Tarot Key 0, the Fool, begins the tarot series. However, it also should end it. In other words, 0 is something, as we surely realize, that precedes numbers. But at all times, it not only precedes numbers, it's there in between numbers, and when numbers are finished, your 0 can still be there. Well, in symbolic language, the Fool, assigned to Tarot Key O, or 0, is really saying that everything, in terms of numbers or manifestation, really exists inside that which we might call the cosmic egg, or that which precedes manifestation, but also continues to exist after manifestation. In other words, it symbolizes that which we think of as superconsciousness, even though the mind, the intellect, cannot really know what superconsciousness is. It can analyze ways and methods in which, if superconsciousness exists, it can analyze just what ways and methods might be used for superconsciousness to manifest itself, knowing at all times, of course, that can't be all of it, but at least to show itself partially. Well, here with the Fool, assigned to superconsciousness, we're starting an idea or a principle which, unless we get this more firmly fixed in our minds and in our hearts, is not this idea of what is represented behind the Fool, principle-wise, unless we get this very deeply rooted into our being, the principle involved here, we're not going to be able to do very well at all with any of the rest of the series. Similar to the idea that the zero is such a necessary thing to math. You know, if we didn't have the zero, it would be very difficult to go into numbers that deal with larger amounts and larger numbers. The zero is what helps our mind to shortcut itself in certain ways and to hold the idea of many or much in a smaller area. Just that plain little symbol, the zero. Now then, all of the rest of the tarot keys, when we start going through them, will be seen to be absolutely dependent on what this represents. Well, first of all, it says it's the Fool. And I guess everything that happens to us certainly is dependent upon our foolishness, at least in one way. It's certainly dependent on that which we might call our ignorance. Everything that happens to us is dependent on where we've been looking, and you see here the Fool is looking somewhere. The Fool is very obviously someone who's journeying. He's going someplace. He's not sitting at home. He's on a trip, and he's not taking drugs. Please remember that. He's not that way. But although if we can see he's on the mountaintop, which would symbolize the finish of a journey, he's obviously looking off to the area or the goal to which he's going. And being at the top of a mountain, it becomes obvious also then that he's going to have to get right back down there in the valley with the rest of us ignorant ones to get to the next mountaintop. So in essence, we can say that one of the most important principles of superconsciousness is that it goes from mountaintop to mountaintop, or shall we say, it goes from the highest that we are capable of to the highest, and yet between the high, between the first and second high that we go to, we have what obviously must be a descent into the valley. The tarot key or the Fool then represents also the movement of the life power itself. And this life power is the universal, the movement of the universal life power. It is the journey, it is the evolution of the life power being represented here in this symbolic form. And not only is it a journey indicating the evolution, but there's also an indication here of what moves the consciousness into the journey. This tarot key is actually indicating the background, or as much of the background reason for the movement of life, consciousness, journey, evolution, as it is possible to show. That is, it is indicating it via the symbolism. And how is this? Well, let's take a look at a few of the important ideas. One of the things that I think says more than most people recognize is the fact that the Fool is holding a white rose. Now, the rose has, through eons and eons of time, been a very important symbol in the occult path, on the occult path. However, and usually, incidentally, it is the red rose. You will see the red rose. We'll bring it up quite a few times through the tarot series and show its many indications. The rose has many meanings, but we will not be able to deal with all of them, certainly not in full. We're just going to give little brief aspects, little inklings. We're going to try to sort of experience the essence of each of these tarot keys because in the lessons you are given the detailed teaching and training that you require, the lessons that you as members receive at home through the mail. So here what we're going to try to do is become enveloped in some deeper experience or aspect of the key, which is going to help us to solve the problems, to arrive at the goals, to enlarge our consciousness, to deepen our insight. In other words, to make us more effective instruments for this very life power, which means to make us more fulfilled individuals or centers of consciousness for this life power. So let's first examine one or two important things that relate to the white rose. Now, the rose in itself is a symbol of desire, but that's one of the meanings of the rose. The rose is also a symbol for the emotional nature. The rose is a symbol of air, and incidentally, the Fool is assigned to the kind of consciousness, the Fool as the life power, which we may think of when we remember in Genesis the Yod He Vav He Elohim, which is what the original text really said, or Lord God, breathed into the nostrils of Adam, and Adam became a living spirit. Remember, Adam is generic humanity, human beings. So, Yod He Vav He Elohim, or the Divine Father, Divine Mother, or the Divine Masculine Feminine Principle in union, bringing Adam into manifestation, or begetting Adam, remember, breathed into his nostrils. In other words, the soul was breathed into Adam. So that the rose, and incidentally the rose is not only a symbol of air, but it is a symbol of air that is subtly giving a very vital message to your soul, whether your conscious mind knows it or not. It is saying in essence that it is the divine superconscious life power, the eternal, beginningless, endless unity of life. It is the mystery of the motion of evolution. It is the movement of the very highest that actually is centered in you, has brought you that livingness that makes you a living spirit or a living soul, and also therefore that gives you that spark which we call the divine soul. Now, it's the divine soul that all of us have to learn to be able to express. And the ability to express this divine soul, which we all have more or less in embryo, some more and some less, embryonic of course, except Jacob, who has it full blown. But you know I'm objective. So we have this divine soul that is growing, evolving via the movement of consciousness or livingness or lives. And this divine soul is able to be grown, developed via the white rose, mind you. That rose the Fool is carrying is white. And the white rose is definitely a symbol for purified desire. Anytime you see a rose, it is symbolizing desire. As I pointed out, it is symbolizing air, it is symbolizing emotions, it is even symbolizing Venus, which is love. That's another one of its symbols, and it's symbolizing a creative imagination, therefore. You know, anything we feel a great deal about certainly stirs our creative imagination. This is obvious to all of us. But we have here the indication of the purified desire, and that's where aspirants can make the most extraordinary mistakes. in not understanding what is meant by purified desire. As we know, many schools of thought say to attain to the highest, or to attain liberation, or to attain samadhi, or to attain cosmic consciousness, what we have to do is to kill out desire. And as you know, in the Western mystery training system, we say, if you kill out desire, what are you going to have left to aspire with? Aspiration is desire, but it's desire in its highest form. In other words, your spiritual aspiration is really some portion of you which already is expressing this part of your nature, which is the white rose. Because every part of this key, we may call it superconsciousness, but every part of this key is a part of you. It has to be, because you had the living soul of God, the divine soul, breathed into you, or you wouldn't be a center of livingness, a center of consciousness. So there isn't anything in any of these symbols which isn't a symbol of you, some of it more or less developed to understand. But in working with these tarot keys, the way you are taught to do, you are naturally learning how to bring about the perfect expression of these symbolic representations, and having them presented to you in symbol as part of what's going to help you to do it. Because we all know that the mind fights verbal teaching on the whole. You might be asking yourselves, then why does any teacher bother to get on a platform and give us a bunch of words? That's a good question. I'll meditate on it. But meanwhile, I will attempt to use verbalism to help point your minds to the symbolic images which you are able to look at there, which will affect your subconsciousness and therefore stir into a greater awakening more and more of the powers that subconsciousness represents. Because remember, no matter how much we may fight certain ideas that are presented to us through words, verbalisms, when we have it presented through symbol, subconsciousness receives it automatically, even when the conscious mind doesn't know it. And that's one of the reasons, amongst many, that here in this tarot key we have that little dog, which is a symbol for intellect, at the heels of the Fool, saying very much more than one thing. Saying, first of all, that we must not permit intellect to try to direct the life power in where it's going. You know, we do try to do it. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've used my intellect and reasoning abilities to try to point out to God why I should have been consulted in everything to help avoid the mess the world's in, you see. Now, and of course, like the Fool here, the Lord of the Universe, just sort of turns his back on me, I think, when I try to give him an argument on that idea. Now, however, aside from our little jests, and this is a jester, you know, the Fool is a jester, the jester right there in court, and we have to learn how to jest with this principle, or again, we won't be able to respond to the positive aspects of all of the tarot keys. Learning how to jest, and that's one of the vital messages in this key also, you know. The message being that we have to learn how to chuckle with our own personalities, at ourselves, but not at in any of these bitter ways. You know, there's a saying I've heard used from time to time, I laugh, out of my bitter heart I laugh. You know, this is not the spirit that we're talking about. The ability to chuckle or to laugh at our little follies actually is one of the most important things we can learn to do, and this tarot key helps us to develop that ability and capacity better and more fully than any other tarot key that we have, though they all do. We have the devil there assigned to mirth. Look at that handsome fellow that you've all thought wasn't handsome. I know, shows that you're going to have to learn how to see. But that devil there is assigned to mirth, and we will come to it in due time when we get on the Sunday morning talks, when we get to key 15. But you see, this is assigned to mirth in a way other than the ability to chuckle at one's personalities being shown here by the life power. Because here the life power has purified desire and goes with this purified desire, this superconsciousness. Whereas with key 15, the devil, we still have the individual in the depths of ignorance, and the ability to see the ludicrous is what's involved with achieving the kind of laughter of key 15. But the real sense of humor that can chuckle at its own need to be important is involved in Tarot Key O, the Fool, and that's why here we have something that should teach us how to approach everything in life itself as a gay adventurer, but as a gay adventurer because of the fact that in us resides that which was before all beginnings, that which is after all endings cease to be, that which is before, after, and all times in between. In other words, it's because we have that in us that we can really develop a sense of security that we're unable to have otherwise. But this sense of security is dependent on recognizing our personalities for what they are. And that's one of the many reasons, incidentally, that this figure, as the Fool, wears a very fancy kind of robe. Now, the robe, incidentally, is the symbol of the personality. You know, your personality and my personality can be thought of and should be thought of as an instrument made by, grown by, the life power. An instrument which the life power puts on. Like it says, I put on a robe of flesh, says the life power, to come down. But that is a robe. In other words, the physical vehicle is a garment of God, of superconsciousness, of the life power. And the personality is what is evolved and grown through these garbs. The personality is the more complex aspect of the garb or the garment. And so here we have a very fancy garment indeed, showing that the life power has gone through previous cycles of experience and has therefore developed what you might call a cultural kind of ability to wear very fancy clothes. That's why I have loved the change in clothing styles, you know. I've just loved them. Not because we should be tied to clothing, no, but because we have seen in the change of style relating to clothing a freedom of the Fool here, where everybody decided, why should I be the slave of a group of mostly men who hate women, with a few women thrown in who probably hate their own sex also, who decide once a year everything else is out and now everybody has to wear this, otherwise they're not worthy of being looked at. You know, they're beyond the pale. They certainly will not be invited into the best circles unless they wear this particular horrible, gruesome thing. And I watched in astonishment not very many years ago when all the women, like a bunch of sheep, actually put on these horrible, ugly tents that took away every vestige of femininity And I've watched with horror, and I have screamed, but of course in a very spiritual way, you understand. I have screamed at the way men have permitted themselves to be choked by collars for these many years, and kept in the drabbest of colors and in the most uncomfortable of clothes, especially come hot weather. I thought, what kind of insanity is this? Because you see, I was seeing it with that charming fellow there. You see, I'm madly in love with him. Yeah, don't get jealous, sweetheart. Don't get jealous. Yeah, I'm madly in love with him. Quiet. Because only when we have this spirit do we have the freedom to be truly the beautiful essence that we are. Because here you see a spirit of freedom deliberately placing certain limits upon itself. And that is one of the most important messages involved there. True freedom always knows how to place limits upon itself. In other words, self-discipline. In the Thursday night classes, I often point out to you that if we didn't discipline ourselves, that is, control ourselves when we feel like tearing somebody apart or cutting their throat or tearing them limb from limb, you hear the expressions. If we didn't control these impulses, why, we wouldn't be able to walk around. On the streets, as loosely as we do, in whatever manner. If we didn't obey certain traffic laws, we certainly wouldn't be permitted to stay behind the wheel of the automobile and drive it. In other words, freedoms are always just within certain frameworks. And only when one can pay attention, when one can know what the limitations are, can we be truly said to be expressing the kind of freedom that all of us yearn for and all of us are really working for. So the freedom of the fool, that is to dress in this marvelous, shall we say, fancy manner, is actually the result of having gained freedom from being tied to the wrong ideas, the wrong principles, from being tied to ignorance. The fool, therefore, can take that coat on and off at will. The belt is take-offable. And so is that outer coat. Underneath, he's wearing the white garment of purity. But he is wearing this garb, and remember, and this garb is beautiful. Therefore, another very vital message being given in relation to this tarot key is that everything that is started, that goes into movement, in evolution, everything actually is moving into evolution, or into whatever its goal is, with all of the beauty and the capacity for beauty that it is inherent in itself and has already been gained. And this capacity for beauty really has to do with a capacity to remain free from the influence of the nonsense, like, as I was pointing out, refusing to wear what a bunch of women haters, whether they're male or female, decided was the style. Now, I think it's just beautiful. I think it's very symbolic, and it's representing the evolution that is taking place in consciousness. That wherever you go, you see people in every stage of garb, from the adorable minis that look so adorable on our young ones, and therefore should please the eye, to the adorable hot pants that look so adorable on the young. In this weather, what could be more intelligent as well as attractive, to the lovely long formals, that is, and you can see females wearing every kind of garment at the same time. They're not tied to, just a fashion anymore, at least not in California. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but Anyway, if they haven't arrived at our level, we're going to emanate it out and help them. And it's marvelous watching our men, our beautiful men, having this freedom. If they like long hair, they have it long. They like short hair, they have it short. They like beards and mustaches, they have beards and mustaches. They don't like it, they don't. Isn't that fabulous? Now this is the spirit of spirits. This is the spirit of Tarot Key O the Fool. It is a freedom, but a freedom that is not injuring another, you understand. Because that is another one of the vital messages of this key. That we set a goal, but as we go to this goal, we have to go with this purified desire. A goal, remember, is something that we want. Say, if I set the goal, if I say, look, I want to develop cosmic consciousness, this is setting a goal, and I have to do things about it. I have to go into, I have to move. Every goal has to do with our setting up areas of desire. Otherwise, we wouldn't go. If we didn't want to cross the street, would we bother? We'd stay in one spot. If we didn't want to have interaction with other people, we'd avoid them. In other words, everything that we do is really done in terms of desire. But the purified desire has to do with every individual who has arrived at a point where not only do they set up goals in order to express more and more of this life power, but they are very careful indeed that they're setting up these goals with their motives pure motives. That's point number one. And with very great care that they're not going to step over anyone else in fulfilling it. In other words, they're not going to damage another. They're not going to take away someone else's job or someone else's friend or someone else's house or whatever it is. They're going to go with this freedom of beauty, but the freedom that has purified motive and purified desire with it. Now this is the essence of your life power. You see, you are a living spirit because God breathed that pure design into you. And you may ask, why, if we have that pure design, this pure desire breathed into us, why have we done all of the various terrible things we have done? Because we have not become fully developed yet. You see, we are being grown. We are being evolved. And so, out of ignorance, out of lack of understanding, we have done many things. But this life power, this superconsciousness, this capacity for beauty, this achievement at a height and yet ready to go to the next height, with absolute security. You notice the security here, even though there's an abyss facing it. This knowledge that, yea, even though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. That's the attitude of the fool right here. This is that security. Here, he's not only at the edge of an abyss, if he takes one wrong step, he'll sure go tumbling down. Nevertheless, he has this sureness of foot. He knows where he's going, and you see, no fear. And I have often felt and thought that if more of our beloved members, our beloved spiritual family here, would use this tarot key to help themselves overcome the fantastic numbers of fears and insecurities that they face, that overwhelms, they would find life not only so much more glorious, but you would even become an utterly and infinitely more delightful person to be around. And therefore other people would want to flock to you. People I hope that you would want to flock. Sometimes we can have a problem in another direction. Because that very spirit of security, that spirit of freedom, that spirit of beauty, that spirit of fearlessness emanates, and others come to bathe in that white sun. You notice that sun is white because it's symbolizing, amongst other things, the force or the power that we call in Kabbalah the limitless light, out of which all things have come and into which all things go, but with the development of the evolution, that is, those beautiful clothes, those gorgeous, colorful clothes that the fool is wearing here, or a very beautiful, unique personality. Now, on the Kabbalistic tree of life, I want you to note that the fool is the path that connects the crown to wisdom. Now, when we chant Aheya, we're chanting the powers of the crown, and that's also, and you notice that's white, and that white sun is symbolizing the crown. As a matter of fact, showing the connection of the path as we travel the various paths of for the expansion of consciousness. And note that wisdom, the Sephira that symbolizes the cosmic father, when we chant Yod He Vahe, we are actually chanting the word of power that helps to bring the activity of that principle, the cosmic power of the Father and the wisdom, into our being. It's helping to promote that. Notice that the fool is that connecting energy between these two paths. But here is something that the Thursday night class should be familiar with by now. That path has only one direction in the flow of energy. It flows from crown to wisdom. There's no return. There are two paths which have only one, where the energy flows in only one direction. All the other paths have a two-way flow. The one direction energy is the fool that connects the crown to wisdom, and it's the magician that connects the crown to understanding. And my next Sunday, which will be the fourth Sunday, I take the second and fourth Sundays, yeah. So this is the second, isn't it? Yeah. So my next Sunday, which will be the fourth Sunday, I will be taking up the magician and showing the various aspects involved there. But the reason both Aleph and Beth, or the fool and the magician, have only one-way flows is because they are the direct agents of that one, the crown, which is the unity, which is the indivisibility, which is the I am of the entire universal consciousness, and which is therefore also the I am of you. In other words, the unity, the indivisibility, the beginning of the whirlings, it is called. And you notice how the fool represents, he's going off to sort of place himself in plenty situations of dizziness. You think of the whirlings. The beginning of the whirlings is what the crown is called, that one, that indivisible, Aheya, and the expression into wisdom and understanding. It takes place at all times, that outpour from the one, because it is always and at all times, in every second of timelessness, it's always both the fool, it's always beginning a new adventure for itself, some cycle, a new cycle of beingness and expansion, and it is always in a state of the self-conscious attention of knowing who and what it is, even though we don't. That does. And we are being trained to know that because of the fact that that is the essence of us. So we have, these are activities that never sleep. You know, it says in the Book of Tokens, and I never sleep. This is the alwaysness, and that abides in you. So the life power, which is always beginning everything, the fool is giving us, amongst other ideas or messages, one of this. You might say it's giving us the kind of guidance that we really need in this manner. It is saying, look, Every single second is a new adventure. Right now, this instant, this is the instant you have right now, and it's the beginning of an adventure. No matter what happened in the past incidentally is carried by that purse. That's the past memory. But you notice that past also has an eye on it, and that eye has to do with having discovered how to look at the devil. The devil is called the ion on that devil is called the eye, incidentally. The eye is the organ of vision, so that is one of its meanings. You see, memory carries a devil with it when we don't know how to remember properly, when we remember the wrong things, when we let ourselves get caught up in time in the wrong way. But here you notice the fool is carrying his memory gaily, lightly, blithely. Starting off, that's the life power in you, the superconscious part of you, the part of you that was never born, the part of you that is never going to die, the part of you that is before all beginnings and is when ends cease to be. It just is. This movement is now, this instant. And this instant is the instant that is absolutely unique. Now, that's the vital message. You see, we have a way of taking experiences from the past. Well, I was rejected last year, and then a few years ago I was rejected by somebody again, and then I was rejected maybe by my mother or father or sister or brother, somebody again. So naturally I expect to be rejected. It's my karma. You see, now that's the bad use of memory. Now, the memory as used here, which as we work with this tarot key, it helps us to develop this ability, is saying, look, whatever happened yesterday, that's part of my wisdom. You see, it connects, remember, the crown to wisdom. That's how it goes, and our wisdom. You see, whatever was, that bag of memory of yesterday is the wisdom I carry in my memory. It isn't the thing that imprisons me. Is he imprisoned with the butt from that bag? He's carrying it lightly. Look how nicely, like a good old hobo. You know what? We all have to become good spiritual hobos, I guess. But that sounds bad, doesn't it? You know, because we think of words and we get all kinds of ideas. But when I use the word hobo, I use it in a very different sense, because responsibility is here with this life power. Responsibility is there because of that white rose. Remember, I told you how important it is, the purified desire. Responsibility is there because he is wearing this belt of time, and he is out to use it in exactly the right way. Responsibility is there because he's carrying the wand of divine will. The wand is a symbol in tarot, you know, of will, and it's the divine will. So there is this going, this traveling, this doing, with this sense of adventure. If you're going to expect the worst, naturally you're going to have the worst, because you are the creative agent for God, and then you're a real fool, not this kind of a fool. Remember, when we recite the pattern on the trestle board, you know, first we say, this is truth about the self. And then regarding the zero, it says, all the power that ever was or will be is here now. Now look, do you know what that means? Your power, all the power. For instance, if you say, I can't accomplish this or accomplish that, I haven't got the ability. You know, or I can't do this or I can't do that because of this or that, always placing limitations and negative limitations. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. When we learn to walk in those beautiful yellow boots, you know, that ought to come in style. I like them. I'll send out the call. When we learn to walk in those glorious yellow boots like that, then we will not make the mistake of thinking of ourselves as being powerless. because in actuality we are, in a sense, sinning against ourselves when we think of ourselves as being powerless. Here, the Lord of the universe makes man in his own image and likeness, even takes the trouble to breathe his own spirit into his nostril, mind you. And what do? We act as though we haven't got a divine soul, and as though God's spirit and ways and means of doing things aren't in us, which is nonsense. We have to learn, but we have to learn how to do it this way. This is how we have to begin all things. With that sureness, the security that even if we have to go down into the valley, even if we have to suffer a few bruises, even if we have to experience some pain, he's going to have some sore muscles, let's face it. But is it worrying him? He knows he's going to get to that goal. So why should we keep ourselves negative with all those worries instead of using that energy to go, go, go? There's the go-go. To go in the positive manner. So this instant is not being limited by the mistakes of the past. Each second is unique. The life power is unique. It is a new beginning. Each instant has whatever was accomplished as the mountaintop. Whether to us it's a mountain or a valley is beside the point. Each spiral, as we move in the evolution of our consciousness, becomes such so that the time finally comes when what is our lowest valley is actually higher than a previous mountaintop, So even there, we have to be careful not to make mistakes in the way we interpret life, experience, or even ourselves. The point is, we have to see that our movement of consciousness, our ability to think, our ability to feel, our ability to want anything, to make goals, our ability to aspire, all of these are a miracle and a magic, and the Lord of the universe is inside of us with this power to accomplish it. But remember, within the frameworks of wisdom. You see, if somebody decides, okay, all the power that ever was or will be is here now. Now I can accomplish any goal. Now what I want to be is a famous organist. I want to be a famous organist. So they're going to sit down and say, tra-la-la-la-la, I'm so happy, I'm going to be a famous organist. They'll sit down and meditate, pull out the key. Oh boy, I'm full of the adventure of life. I'm going to be a famous organist. And then, they go meet some friends and, oh, tra-la-la-la, hey, isn't that marvelous? I'm going to be a famous organist. And maybe meet your friend 1, 2, 3 weeks or several months later. How you doing with becoming an organist? Oh, tra-la-la-la, keeping positive, I'm going to be a famous organist. Well, have you got an organ? Oh, no. No, how come? Oh, well, God will bring the organ. After all I have to do is feel I'm going to be a famous organist. God will bring the organ. I'm not worrying. Tra-la-la-la-la. Well, have you taken lessons? Lessons? No. All the ability and beauty is in me. Stop giving me negative suggestions. I hope I've taught you something. You see, it has to be within the bounds of wisdom, the true reason. And that's why our little bag there of memories is so marvelous that we need it, you see. But we should go with a tra-la-la, mind you. Absolutely, we should tra-la-la all over the place. But what we need to do then is, oh, tra-la-la-la, I am starting to save for an organ. I've gone to work and I'm earning so much money and I'm putting aside so much every day for the organ, tra-la-la-la, and visualize myself getting that organ and see exactly where it's going to be, and I keep watching the funds. Incidentally, you beautifully have gotten us one of the selectrics that I've been meditating and given a few verbal hints very very loudly. Now all we need to do is to pay for the other one. And incidentally, the very newest one just came out for us, just in time. The very absolutely best, just the They're the latest development on it. And each one costs $90 more. And actually, each one is like having two machines. You know, if you want to know how much it costs, oh, tra-la-la-la, we mustn't worry about how much. Let's see, you just donate what you can towards it. And if there's any left over, it'll go towards a copy machine that we need when we get the other machine. So you see, we tra-la all right, but we have to tra-la in a manner that is in keeping with the goals. It goes with the path. We don't just let ourselves tumble headlong down into the abyss. The life power then is in you. And this main message I'd like for you to take home today, this Sunday morning, is that we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to each other, we owe it to all our near and dear ones, we owe it to God, and we not only even owe it to our near and dear ones, we even owe it to our enemies if we have any. Oh, we especially owe it to them, because imagine how it would upset them if we walked with joyous fulfillment. You know, that will, I'm sure, evolve them much more rapidly than anything else, wouldn't it? But you see, we really owe it to the universal life power which this is representing, to walk in this manner. That is, to have faith in the guidance of the Most High, yet at the same time to take with us all of the beauty, the goodness, the wisdom that we have from all these past incarnations, to work at developing it, to recognize that no matter how much sorrow or despair or mistakes we have made or had in the past, this is a new adventure, to take all livingness as the adventure of God. When we go to a restaurant, we sit down, we adventure the new taste. You know, this is my joy on account of God just loves it so much through me that God made me a glutton, you know. You know, they say it's a deadly sin. Well, you know, after all, that's how God wanted it with me, because I give God such pleasure with the sensations, the taste, the fragrances, the essences of the tongue. So you see, when I'm going to eat, it's an adventure. And spiritual food, this is an adventure. Now the whole point is, each day is the new adventure. Each moment is the new adventure. If we get up and go to work, we should get up with the realization this is a new adventure. Everything that we do, and there is no such thing as the same thing all over again. Nothing is the same all over again. Walk with the sense of adventure, this sense of security, this willingness to walk in the spirit of the life power, to reach for those higher goals and to do what is necessary. I think that we can not only have a more beautiful week, but we can have a more beautiful forever afterness. But we will start it. I think perhaps that's all we need to say for this morning about the Fool.